Okay, it is Tuesday. It is high noon Pacific Standard Times, and you are tuned into the Architects and Heroes live stream show. I guess technically you're not tuned in. You just clicked go on the type box that you're on right now. So welcome. I'm Stephen R. of Zygote, and we have an incredibly special guest here today, Sean Deason. The man is a legend, absolute legend. Before we jump in with Sean, I want to take just a minute to tell you about Analog Cases. Analog Cases are these amazing cases for electronic musicians. They have everything from the OP1, the SP404, the Digitac, Keystep, Minilog, Grandmother, and really and a pretty elaborate line of keyboard cases as well. Analog Cases, where they say they make amazing cases for electronic music machines. Shout out to Greg and Analog Cases for that. Okay, right now, I consider this man to be an absolute legend. He is part of the third wave of Detroit techno producers that really has been highly influential, run Matrix Record. The one and only Sean Deason is here with us today. How's it going, man?
Hey, Steven, how's it going with you?
It's as good as it can be expected during the pandemic. It's a very strange time to be creating things and doing things.
Creating things, isn't it?
What's that?
It's the best time to be creating things. You got nowhere else to be.
Yeah, I know. You're at home. You're in the studio constantly.
Right.
So, well, wow, man, this is a real honor, and I really appreciate you coming on the show. And I think for those of us who are aware of your background and what you've done with Matrix Records and just all of the amazing artists that you've put out on the label and your role in Detroit Techno overall, have a really good sense of the history of what you've done. But can you maybe, for those who are a little less initiated into this world, tell us about your background and how you got started as a producer?
Sure. Okay. My background is in graphic design. I went to art school, Center for Creative Studies, a pretty well-known art school here in the States. And when I was in school, I was the music guy. I was a club kid. And I went to all the clubs, different types of music, goth and new wave and house and techno clubs. And I was the guy that everyone in college went to when they wanted to idea tune that they heard in the club over the weekend. They just hum something. They're like, hey, I went to so-and-so on Saturday night and I heard a sound and went like, da-da-da-da-da-da. And I was like, oh, that's so-and-so on this record. And I always was from them. And I was always booked to DJ parties in college because I had all the newest records, everything the clubs had, I had. And so from there, I was just, I was always music obsessed. How did I get started? Well, as a designer, I decided since I love music so much, I should probably design for record labels. So I looked in the Yellow Pages and called up Transmat, Metroplex, and KMS. They just so happened to all be in the same building. I didn't know any of those guys. I just called them out of the blue and said, hey, I'm a designer. I want to show you what I do. So they made appointments for me all on the same day to come and check them out. And so I went over and hung out. I met with Derrick May first over his loft. And I was just sitting around. There was a bunch of guys there hanging out with Derrick May. And he was busy being Derrick May. He was still Derrick May like 30 years ago. He hasn't changed a bit. And so he had this keyboard in the corner. I don't know what kind of keyboard it was, but I went over and I started playing around with it. And I did a little melody. And Derrick came over. He's like, that sounds kind of cool. I was like, wow, really? Derrick May thinks something I did sounds cool. And right then and there, I was bitten by the techno bug. In that moment, I thought, maybe I could do this. So I put it upon myself to learn how to make Detroit techno, how it's put together. I was friends with Alan Oldham. We had a radio show called Fast Forward. I used to hang out over his studio in a recording studio for the radio show. And through him, he had guests coming in. This was when Plus 8 was just taking off. So he had Richie Hawtin come in and Kenny Larkin and the whole Plus 8 crew came through the radio show at one point or another. and through him I met all the Plus 8 guys, and I hit it off with Dan and Kenny Larkin. They were roommates at the time, Kenny Larkin and Dan Bell. So I was hanging out at their studio, and they were showing me the ropes, showing me how to work the gear, how to program 909s and synths and drum machines, and working with the sequencers. And from there, like, Dan told Richie Hawtin, hey, this new kid, Sean, he wants to start making music. I think he's pretty good at it. So Richie's like, really? Send him over to my house. So Richie lived in Windsor at the time, and this was back before 9/11. We could go freely between Detroit and Windsor, Detroit and Canada, for people who aren't local, because like you can see Canada from Detroit. It's right across the river. You could practically throw a stone and hit a Canadian if you wanted to. And so Richie sent a message through Dan for me to come over to his studio in Windsor. He was in his parents' basement at the time. Mm-hmm. So I went over there on Sundays and just hung out. He let me free in his studio to just hang out and mess around with his gear. He had all the techno gear of the time. So I learned everything that I could from Kenny Larkin and Dan Bell and Richie Hawtin. And then Alan was starting his label Generator, where I think he had it going. I think I was the third release on the record label. Mm-hmm. But he said, why don't you do a track for me? So I did a track. What was it called? I don't know what the track was called right now, but he released it as a single on Generator, and that was my first record out on Alan Oldham's label. And then Kelly Han heard about me through Claude Young, and she said, hey, you want to record a record for Acacia? I was like, yeah, I haven't recorded anything. She said, well, that's not a problem. Come over to my house. So I went to Kelly Han's house. And in one afternoon, I recorded an EP, my first EP called the Cyclops EP. It was on Acacia Records. Mm-hmm. And from then on, it was just all uphill from there, pretty much. Yeah. The climb was pretty sudden and pretty easy, I think. Yeah. So I started my record label, Matrix, in probably, I don't know, 92 or 93. Mm-hmm. And that was just because that was the thing to do. It was easy to start a record label and everyone was doing it. So instead of, being on someone else's label, you just start your own and come up with your own sound, your own feel. Mm-hmm. So that's what I did. I started Matrix Records, and 40 or so releases later, here I am.
Yeah, you have a very, very impressive discography. As a producer and as a label owner. I mean, I think there's something, at least from what I've seen on the label, you've got 57 releases on Matrix. And, not to mention the fact that early on, when you were at the Center for Creative Studies, that you had done sleeves designs for Juan Atkins, for Derrick May, like you had mentioned, Kenny Larkin, A Guy Called Gerald. I mean, just that alone is such a core group.
The person I designed for was Carl Craig. He and his partner were starting a record label called Retroactive. And like he and Damon Booker were working at a copy shop at the time when he was launching a label. Mm-hmm. They were launching a label. Actually, Alan Oldham was working at a different copy shop. I think copy shops were the focal point of design back then.
Right.
But, so one day after they finished their shift, they came over to my crappy apartment in the Cass corridor and talked about the record label and we needed a logo for it. So I did some thumbnails by hand, mm-hmm. and to show them, some ideas. And I showed it to Carl, and he's like, that's it. I love it. This one right here. I go, okay, I'll make a finished one and send it over to you. He's like, no, I want this right here. Like, but that's just a rough. He's like, no, I love it like this. So the Retroactive logo, it all made me cringe because it wasn't meant to be a finish. It was just showing him, a concept.
Like a rough draft, yeah.
Right, yeah. So then next thing you know, that rough draft is everywhere. And Carl blew up big, and the whole scene blew up big. But it was nice to be part of the start of the whole Detroit scene.
I mean, yeah, I was gonna say you've seen this evolve, from a very early iteration and a very early inception of what Detroit Techno was, how the origins of it. I mean, as a producer, it must be as you're coming up in that environment, how did working with all those really iconic producers early on in your music career and your creative career, because you still do design work, how has that impacted you as a creative and as an artist and as a musician?
I think it all goes hand in hand. There was a lot of, when I was at CCS, my graduating class included, besides myself, there was Abdul Haq,
mm-hmm.
and Tony Drake.
Mm-hmm.
He recorded for Transmat, and Adam Miller from Adult, and also his wife. Can't remember her name right now.
Is it Nika?
That doesn't sound right. No, but
Nicola?
Huh?
Is it Nicola?
Nicola? That sounds about right.
Yeah, she did photography, right?
Yeah, she did photography for my album, Razorback, the Allegory Metaphor album. That was her photography. Yes, and so just from that 1 year at CCS, the graduating class, is funny. We're all kind of blossomed into the techno scene from that.
Yeah,
interrelated. It was a amazing time in Detroit.
It's the legacy of it. It's what I find it really interesting, especially about electronic music, that musicians that come out of Detroit, is that every other scene, I think, has one or two artists that will kind of come up and they'll have this sort of meteoric, fast, quick rise. And they'll have like a record or two, and then it kind of seems like there's like a lifespan of like maybe 3 or 4 years where there are a lot of things out, and then things kind of fall off for a lot of musicians. I feel like Detroit techno producers have just a different sense of longevity and just more innovation in certain ways. I mean, it was the origin, really. Like Chicago and Detroit are kind of the origin of all things electronic music. So it makes sense that the innovators would be there.
Right. Yeah, I think it's part of having your own sound and doing your own thing and not following the trends. So if you don't follow the trends, you're gonna fall off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's wise.
I remember people were telling me back in the mid '90s, Sean, you gotta do some electro. Electro's hot. You gotta do electro. I'm like, but I'm not an electro artist. Like, yeah, but that stuff sells like hotcakes. But I didn't join that bandwagon.
Right. I mean, it's I think there's a lot to be said about kind of staying true to kind of a core sound and kind of evolving through kind of the history of what the music has been in the past, and kind of it's always been just so futuristic. And you look at everybody that comes out of there that's still continuing, to do really great and innovative work, and it's just like a blueprint for the future. And look, what's that?
I see what you did there.
Yeah, you see what?
Your Cabaret Voltaire album behind you.
Oh yeah. I've got to have like good, good props around the set. Yeah. This is like where I live, so it's always like.
Right. I have to pay homage to Falco and Florian.
I like it. No, that's great. That's great. With the label in particular, like you've really, my Convection is one of the artists that comes to mind, because I've known Gerard for years. We knew each other back in Texas back in the day. But you have this great roster of artists that and you have such a deep back catalog. In terms of kind of the origins of Matrix and kind of where we are today, where are things going with the label? What's going on with the label these days?
The label's been kind of dormant lately. I've also started an offshoot of Matrix called Morpheus.
Uh-huh.
See the theme there? And
yeah.
I was surprised no one took that name, had taken that name. It was just up for grabs, so I took it. But Morpheus is more the singles. So I did just upload a new single, Morpheus number 5, which is a project called Martin Deason with Gary Martin and I collaborating.
Uh-huh.
And what'd you drop? Did I drop one name too many? I've been dropping a lot of names. I realized, like, I gotta stop mentioning people.
No. That's great. No.
Yeah. So Matrix 5, I just uploaded it for distributors last week. Awesome. So I'm reactivating it. I figure I building all these tracks and all this music that I have an outlet, I should use it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, you know, I know that there are tons and tons of amazing records that I'm sure, I mean, is everything that's on the Matrix label, is it available in digital format as well?
No, not everything now. I don't think digital started until way middle of the catalog somewhere.
Have you thought about making them available in digital formats?
I've given it some thought. Someone's got to do a lot of
that's a lot of written
from old dads, and I don't know who that person's gonna be. Apparently, it's gonna be me.
Hey, you never know. You never know. It can happen. You know.
Yep. So it'd have to be transferred and remastered and edited for digital, but that's a possibility.
Yeah, and so, you know, with that, in terms of the back catalog, and then what you're doing, you know, have done more recently, and you've released under the Morpheus label. Are you planning on releasing that strictly digitally? Are you going to do vinyl, or what's your plan for releases of the new things?
Well, the Sean Deason project is available on vinyl. Gary's distributing that, and that's already out and about. I think the supply on that record's running low because it was a limited edition. So it's a limited edition white vinyl release. But that's out right now. So I'm handling the digital distribution to, you know, all the major online outlets for that one. But there's no plans for the Morpheus catalog to be on vinyl yet, unless there's some super hot track that needs to be on vinyl.
Yeah. Is Morpheus really more as a singles label? Is it more concentrated and focused on digital in the digital platforms?
It is more focused on digital and dance floor friendly DJ material.
I mean, your output as an artist is really diverse too. I mean, you know, you've done everything from like to drum and bass, you know.
Right. I've done drum and bass, ambient, dub, techno, house, what other, maybe a little bit of electro.
Yeah.
Not to cash in, just in the mood for it. But my interests are really eclectic. They shouldn't. That word should not exist.
Yeah, I know.
Eclectic. I think similar sounding words.
I know. There's there's some that are in my repertoire and some that I'm just like, I'm gonna find out whatever the thesaurus word is for that, because it's not my word.
Right, yeah.
But I think having, you know, really diverse taste kind of, it makes you well-rounded. I mean, it's one thing to do it as a listener. I think as a producer, you know, did you get pushback from labels when you're like, I want to go in this direction, or I want to try this thing, you know, that maybe not be like just straightforward to the floor techno, that's kind of in the, you know, what an outsider might perceive, you know, what somebody from Detroit should be making?
I've been lucky. I haven't had any label interference, like as far as the projects I've licensed, like my Razorback album to Studio Play 7. Like there was a bidding war over that with a couple other labels that I won't mention, but they took it as is. There was no, actually, I think they left off a track for time. So I think they added it to the single. It was like a B-side. But no, I've been lucky with labels. They have just taken everything that I've submitted and ran with it.
That's awesome.
There's never been a, you know, hey, we want an album of this style. So when I did my Freak album for Distance, that was, you know, me kind of slowing down my RPMs or BPMs. Yeah, BPMs. So I was kind of delving into where Allegory and Metaphor was going to end up. So it wasn't as hard as Razorback, but it wasn't as ambient dub as Allegory and Metaphor.
Yeah, I love that. I love Allegory and Metaphor. I love that. That was one of the first records that I was exposed to of yours, and it was just like steady on repeat for
years. Right?
Such a good record, man.
That album seems to be like perennial. People are discovering it still to this day, and I get letters from people. Well, not letters physically, but, you know, messages from people saying, hey, I just discovered this album by yours and I love it, and you got anything else like this? So of course I do. I have another album called Dotted at a Shrimp Hut that was released digitally, independently. And that's very like allegory metaphor continued. And in the future, I'm working on I've always wanted to do movies, soundtrack, movie scoring. So I'm working on a movie score right now, but I don't have a movie. So I just always wanted to do one. So I'm just making the music first and see if anyone wants to license it for a movie.
Oh, that's interesting. So you're making the music. Have you thought about actually maybe making the movie yourself?
No.
Because that relationship between what you do visually, and that's a really interesting thing. And I find it fascinating, of all the people that you were in school with, how many of them went on to also, be involved in sort of the techno music production aspect of things. And, when to loop back around to your idea, to your, studying and your the craft of doing the design work, do you find that there's a relationship between what you do kind of as a visual artist or a graphic designer with the music that you create? I mean, do you find like natural relationships between the visual work you do and the music?
I'd say with all art, there's like a balance of contrast, and there's layers upon layers. Sometimes you have to, just like in design, where you're designing for the white space. In music, you're also writing the silent notes. You're writing the silence in between the notes. And that was like something that I got from Carl Craig. No, it wasn't Carl who said that. I think it was Dan Bell who said, you're also writing the silences. And I always keep that in mind. There's always something from everyone I know who I'm inspired by. There's always a little thing in the back of my head that I keep in mind when I'm writing music. Like, what would Carl do?
You get T-shirts. What would Carl do?
Yeah. There's some on my wall. Do I have one in here? There was a saying that Carl posted back saying, "Stop joking around with the technology and make some music." So I printed that out and put it on my wall in front of in my other studio.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that where people are, buying. Yeah, a buddy of mine was making a joke. He's like, I think the new midlife crisis for guys isn't buying like a sports car; it's buying like modular synthesizers. And there's so much of a fairly large community of people that are out there like, buying these modular synthesizers and kind of putting different configurations together and posting stuff up.
It is crazy what people do to get one note, one beat.
I know. And then, but I've got people like Sam Prekop from the Sea and Cake, who has an album which I consider to be one of the best records that has come out this year, of stuff that was done on modular, but it's just so musical, right? It's sort of like the finding that randomness, but outside of people that are really taking it and building really beautiful music with it, there's also this community of just like synth nerds that are just like, and I think that comment that you had about the, what is it? What do you say? Quit messing around with the technology and make some
Carl said, quit jerking around with technology and make some music.
Yeah.
I do have a tendency to, be constantly updating my software or buying new gear and incorporating it into the studio, or never using it, never using it, and then selling it for the latest, greatest thing. But I never used the last thing I had. Way back, have a little synth addiction myself.
Yeah.
Kind of overcome. Like someone's selling a, what is it? The DeepMind 12 for really cheap here. And I'm trying to talk myself out of it. And it's not easy.
I know. I was making a running joke the other day. It's a friend of mine who's a musician. I'm like, this is my dining room table, and I got divorced, a few years back. I'm like, this is my dining room table now. It wouldn't look like this. And I think if I had more people in my life, my whole situation might be, a different thing. But I think it's so important to sort of, balance out all of these different sort of elements of a person's life, right? So you're looking at, being a music producer. You're looking at, making art. You have other things that you do in business that are not necessarily as focused on the music piece. Outside of that, you're balancing family, you're balancing all of these different things.
Right.
As an individual, that can be a hard thing to do if you don't have a full squad helping you with all the like you said about the back, the back catalog. You're like, well, somebody's got to rip them all to death, and I don't know who that's gonna, who that's gonna be. It's a hard thing to do when you only have so many hours in the day,
True. Yep.
But
I feel for artists who can't tour, like who make their living from DJing and touring and playing clubs and parties, because that's all gone. It's been gone since the beginning of the year, and some people just had no fallback position.
Yeah, I mean that was going to be my next question. Is that now that we're 8 months into the pandemic, 9 months into the pandemic, how have you seen this impacting other producers, DJs, and people in the Detroit area that relied on those events to make their living? How has that impacted the community?
Well, it's impacted them negatively on the bank accounts, that's for sure. But I've also seen that everyone's back in the studio now. Mm-hmm. So there's going to be a whole slew of Detroit Techno coming out. I've seen pictures of so many of other artists in the studio right now. Like, I don't even want to drop any more names. I've dropped too many.
These are my heroes, man. So it's
it's going to be a world of Detroit Techno next year. So many people who haven't recorded or been in the studio in a while are right now in the studios.
That's fantastic news, actually. Yeah, can I ask you about what you have? So you've got the one on Morpheus, and it's Martin
Deason.
Martin Deason,
right?
And that's dropped, so that's already out, correct?
That is out on vinyl.
Okay.
And digital comes out January 5th.
And what all are you working on? Other new projects as well?
Also coming out on vinyl soon is a third ear EP called Rumspringa.
Oh yeah, I saw something about that somewhere.
Yeah, it's out digitally right now.
Okay.
All the digital stores right now, but you get that on vinyl soon.
Do you have an affinity to Quakers there? Do you have a back?
Yeah.
It's in my head.
I'll never forget my Rumspringa.
What's that?
I'll never forget my Rumspringa.
I was like, wow, I'm very interested in this. I want to hear the backstory.
There is no backstory. I just like the concept of leaving the Quakers for however long is it? A year? Did they get a year?
I don't know.
I don't know how long the period is, but you get a choice and if you want to come back or not. That's a pretty cool concept. Like they go crazy. They drink and smoke and party like nuts, and then they're expected to put back on their suspenders and big hat and go back and return. I don't know how they do it. Some don't.
Yeah. There was a whole show.
The ones that do come back are probably the most amazing.
Yeah.
So I always liked that concept, and the word was available. No one had used it.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating concept to think that there are people that are that devout and that are that core that say, hey, you want to go see what it's all about? Go see what it's all. I was raised Baptist in Oklahoma. There wasn't anybody going, go cut loose for me. There wasn't anybody saying,
go find a whore and see what it's all about, Stephen.
What's that?
Go find yourself a whore and see what it's about. Be back.
Let's just say I started Rumspringa and I don't think I ever came back. Whatever the Baptist version of
You'll be back.
Yeah. I mean, but it's funny. I think it's a great name. First of all, totally. I think it's a great name. Is it in terms of its production? Because I saw it posted, but I didn't get a chance to listen to it. Is it sort of classic Detroit techno? Is it outside of the
very, I'd say, classic retro sounding, backwards looking, back to the root of Detroit techno? I think heavy influences that you can hear right away if you listen to the tracks. You're like, oh, I can't even drop any more names because there's so many all over this place now. But these are all my friends and people that I know I've came up with, and it's just to me, they're like just, the dude that, was hanging out on my couch or came over. But I know internationally they're big names. So
Yeah.
it's hard to reconcile that in my head with the guy who was, feeding my kid Cheerios.
Has it been how has it been for you, to see the evolution of what's happened with everyone out of Detroit? Like, do you ever stop and think, wow, like that's a lot for one city to hold on its shoulders, or to see how amazing, like you said, like this person who's internationally famous is on your couch and you're having lunch or whatever. I mean, it must be surreal.
I don't know. It doesn't faze me, but it does amaze me.
Yeah.
Does that rhyme?
Yeah.
So yeah, like I think just being from Detroit and being able to see the world just because you can, put a drum track together and add some sense to it, being so innovative and creative at doing that is a huge opportunity. So I don't think being from any other city would have had such easy access to that lifestyle or that option, because there's not a lot of like Houston techno that I know of. Gerard may be the only one.
And then East Dallas, like Dallas has got a pretty good scene. You've got Convection, you've got Cygnus, you've got Juan's Dover, you've got there was a whole resident advisor thing on sort of how Dallas has sort of kind of made its way, scrapped its way into like this electro, kind of known for electro.
Really?
So yeah.
How do they compare to Detroit as far as quantity?
Yeah, that's not an argument.
Quality, and we got major talent in Detroit. Out of Detroit, it's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy, and it's also it's so funny because the narrative about Detroit is if you watch any news show that's not talking about the music or whatever, it's very like, oh, people are leaving in droves and there's abandoned homes and then it's like, oh, you've got third wave, you have all these other people that are coming in and doing innovative things, and it's really I hear a lot about Detroit, but not from people that are from Detroit. What's your take on where the city is right now overall?
The city's made an amazing comeback. You wouldn't even recognize Detroit from 10 years ago. You go downtown, like maybe 10 years ago, downtown after 5 o'clock, it would be a ghost town, completely empty because there was nothing to do, nowhere to be. There's nothing going on in Detroit, but it's made a huge renaissance, and you would not recognize it. It's a very vibrant, thriving downtown area, and it's out to the residential areas also. There's a lot of new construction, a lot of families moving in, multi-million-dollar lofts going up where there used to be blight. It's it's very different.
That's amazing.
Imagine Detroit to be. Like if they tried to make a Dr. Detroit or what other movies were very dystopia Detroit, futuristic hellholes, but they try to do one of those now, like Escape from New York kind of style, it wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah. It would be more like escape from your artisanal coffee destination.
Yeah, I get out of Whole Foods.
escape with a vegan wrap.
Right.
But that's always great. It's great. It's such a unique city in multiple ways, because I was watching. There's a really well-known hip hop DJ and producer named House Shoes that's now based here in Los Angeles, but he's from Detroit. He's a Detroit guy from way back, and I was listening to an interview with Sam Valente, who's the Ghostly International founder. And how he talked about, like, one of his early inspirations was going to this club where House Shoes was the DJ, and House Shoes basically let him shadow him and stuff. But then that became part of a big techno, electronic music kind of hybrid label that really embraced, like it seems like the hip hop community, the techno community, it's like a really close knit group of people that are out of Detroit.
Yeah. Yep. I think so. My little brother's a hip hop artist. He's been doing a lot of collaborations lately, and actually I produced a track for him recently that he performs live with. I sampled a Detroit industrial band called Shock Therapy. I don't know if they made it out your way, but they were the industrial pre-techno band back in the 80s here. They were great. So I sampled one of their tracks and reconstructed it, and he uses it to rap to. It was a great success.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's fantastic whenever you can find sort of the common ground with other producers from the city you're from.
Right. So at his shows, he does a lot of I don't know what they're called in the rap world. I'm not in the rap world. I think they're like showcase shows where there's like 50 rappers on the flyer. But yeah, when he plays that song on stage, and he gets a lot of compliments on it. No one knows what it is. It's from like 30 something years ago, but it's still really powerful.
I think that some of the best music actually has a historical context, and I think that's not more relevant than it is in electronic music, where it's just so easy to take sort of a historical reference on something, sample it, and put it into something new. And, I feel like you guys in Detroit have kind of perfected that art, and to the point where, like, you might hear samples, but they're not obvious, right? There might just be like small little runs from, and you'll hear like, I know that, but I don't know from where, And you don't know, like
years later, you might hear it in context, and and you go, oh, that's where Moody Man got that from.
Right? Yeah. I mean, it's man. So what have you been up to? During the pandemic, like what, I guess this is a time for kind of not doing much, but planning, but what are you looking forward to, once this thing passes and we all get the vaccine?
Just going maskless for one thing. I mean, I like the anonymity. Edit that word to make it sound right. This is live. You didn't tell me that. So I like being
incognito
with a mask. First it was a little awkward, first time putting on a mask going into a Kroger, but then I realized no one knows me here, and I think I like the mask now. But I think it'll be weird being out in public and no one's wearing a mask after we get a 75% vaccinated level. So I'm looking forward to just returning to normal. Yeah,
I think a lot of people are. Well, definitely we'll be on the lookout for those new releases. And
another release on Rennie Foster's label.
Okay.
RF. Yeah. What is it called? When I usually name things retroactively because they need a name. So it's just like, I don't know, Untitled. Untitled 98 now. So this was electro acid combined. So it's literally a track I did that was electro and acid.
Excellent.
So there's going to be remixes from Rennie Foster and Derek Thompson, Drivetrain. And I forget who else is going to be remixing it, but look for that in the future on RF as well. More Matrix stuff in the works. A movie soundtrack for a movie that doesn't exist. I don't know what I should call that. Music for films.
Hey.
There you go. Did Brian Eno already do that?
He did airports and what was the second one? I forget what the second was. I feel like I should know that, but I'm like, I only have so much space up here. Something has. Yeah. I know. Well, Sean, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. I heard from a little bird that you might be relaunching the website sometime in the next few months, possibly.
Yeah,
no,
little birds are chatty these days. Yeah, I'm going to be relaunching a Matrix website that's going to be more, substantial. not just a identity site that has information about me, because you can get that anywhere.
Right.
So it'll be something that's more a reason to come back to it. There's something to do there and something to gain by going to this website. So that's
well, as soon as it's ready to launch, we'll get you back on and we'll talk in depth about it and your plan. And very excited to hear that you've got new stuff coming down the pipeline. And I hope you and your family are being safe during this time.
All right, you too, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely, Sean. Thank you so much. Have a great one, man, and we'll talk to you soon, okay?
All right, you too, man. Thanks. Bye now.
All right, take care.